Hello and welcome to Salute, to Central Florida Salute. And I'm Bob Peters, your host, and I have with me a World War II veteran who was at the Battle of the Bulge, and I heard about him through the Daily Commercial. We have this wonderful article on him. You could not go back overseas for because of the virus and all that. So your lovely daughter.
I was scheduled to visit Belgium and go through the towns that we liberated, all the way to Rochenval, which was on the same river, where we got lost 80% of the unit. It was like a suicide mission. The Germans were entrenched on the high ground. They had 60-ton tanks, and we were supposed to have some artillery support. The forward observer got killed, so we didn't get any support. And we were known as the Lost Battalion. We were attached to 82nd Airborne, and when they had a rough mission to do, they assigned us to do it. And I first joined the unit when they came back from Panama. They had been trained to jump out of gliders, which was very dangerous, and they were a very rowdy bunch. And I was one of the first replacements they had.
They needed a rowdy guy?
They had malaria, they had machetes, they drank a lot, and I got broken into the Army real fast because I learned to stay in my bunk at night.
Okay.
And let's back up a little bit.
Yeah,
okay.
you know, because I'm glad you came, because I tell you, I do this show too.
Oh, okay.
So I got
I'm
the questions
sorry.
for you, and then you're
I
supposed to
got off-
answer the questions.
I got off on a tangent.
Yeah, I know. You were born in 1925 in
Right.
Canada, right? And at
Montreal.
17, is that right? Or 18?
18.
17 years old, you went in, you went in, right?
No, I went in when I
You
was
followed your
18.
parents. Oh, yeah, you followed your parents from Canada here, right?
My parents had to move to Florida because of the health reasons. So we followed them by bus and went to St. Petersburg.
And when you got here at 18, you got drafted, right?
I got drafted.
Tell us a little bit
and
about that.
I got drafted and I was processed at Camp Landing, Florida. And from there I went to Fort McClellan, Alabama for basic training. And during basic training, we were told that we'd be going to South Pacific. And I said, well, what alternatives are there? And they said, well, you can apply for pilot training for helicopters, or you can go and apply for airborne. I said, I'll apply for helicopter training. Well, I didn't pass the physical. I was too short. I couldn't reach the pedals. So then I applied for parachute training. I was accepted, and I went to Fort Benning, where I took parachute training. It took about, I'm trying to recall how long, it was about a month. The first week was physical exercise, physical training, and if you spit on the ground, they made you pick it up. They were very strict, and I made it through parachute training, and I got assigned to this unit, 551st, which really broke us in. We were the first replacements that they had. And it took about at least a month before they'd even talked to us. They had just come back from Panama, and they had trained on gliders, which was a real disaster later on. I'll tell you about it in the battle.
No, I want to hear about the gliders, because I never knew anybody jumped out of a glider. Did they?
Yeah,
jump?
they jumped out of the gliders, and they were used to find out what the gliders could do.
Yeah, I had the honor of interviewing a guy who during World War II flew a glider, And my uncle was in on D-Day, and the one thing he told me was he prayed that he didn't have to get in one of those gliders because there's no place to land, really.
That's right. Well,
And
I'll
you
tell
mentioned
about
that in here, about something about that, right?
I'll tell you about that. Yes,
Oh,
about
I'm
the
ready to
gliders.
listen.
From jump school, I went to Camp McCall, North Carolina, where I would join the 551st. This was a separate unit. We weren't part of any other outfit. It was, and most of the personnel were old people that had been in the Army many years before the war even started. And one thing I remember is when we had payday, there was a lot of crosses on the paperwork. So a lot of them didn't even know how to read or write. However, they were gung-ho and they could do anything. Let's proceed from there.
Yeah, you would. I was reading in your bio. I asked for a bio, and your daughter sent me. Actually, it looks like a novel. To be honest with you, most people have a bio as one page. This is 7 pages, and it's amazing because as soon as I read it all, I said this guy ought to be in a movie. We ought to be doing a movie about him, not just a YouTube. But you talk about at training, you jumped out one time and you landed in the water.
Oh yes, that was during a training exercise. Our commander got assigned to a different outfit for a while. They sent in a new commander, and he was really disturbed by lack of discipline in this outfit. They didn't want to wear jump boots. They wore regular shoes, and he had a hard time getting them to follow orders. So what he did, he scheduled a night jump, and this night jump, we had full equipment, and it was in the middle of the night, and it was over what we thought was a drop zone. It was happened to be a lake. The 7 men in front of me got dropped in the middle of the lake, so did I, but I landed right up to my nose in water. I didn't know I was going to hit water because it was black. It was pitch dark. And I took this one step forward and started to go under. And I couldn't breathe, so I took a step back and I figured, well, that's the way to get back to shore. I couldn't release any of my lines from the parachute because we didn't have quick release at that time. They were separate straps going all over you. And I made it to shore, and I didn't know what happened really as far as the men that drowned. I didn't read about it in the paper. The Army did not want that to get out, that information. But I found out that's what happened. My friends all drowned. The pilot of the aircraft, the words he got was reprimand for not being on course. He was off course. That's the last I heard of it. From there, let's see where we're at.
Well, it's okay. On August 14th, 1904, planes took off for southern France.
Oh yeah, after we had a commander that was very strict on training. And he'd run us all morning, and when we fell, he'd come over and check you. And if you were faking, he'd say, Goya. And now we adopted that as our motto in the unit, G-O-Y-A. We thought it was great, outstanding young Americans. But actually what we said it was, get off your ass. So we were known as the Goya Battalion. Where am I now?
Yeah, I think we're talking about the landing.
Overseas.
We're talking about landing in the Alps.
They didn't have enough men to take to the port of embarkation. More than half was in the stockade. So the colonel went to the stockade and he said, I'm gonna let you all get out if you promise to behave yourselves and not get in any more trouble, and we'll get on the Liberty ships and you'll go overseas. I said, fine. I was in the stockade with everybody else.
What?
The reason I was there is because I went AWOL with my buddy Darrell Peterson. They wouldn't give us a furlough. They wouldn't give us any time off. And we knew that we may not come back. So we went and took off. Anyway, we went and boarded a Liberty ship. The capacity was 500 men. And the name of it was, I got it in the write-up.
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot now. Yeah. And I've heard of that.
Abraham Lincoln or something.
Yeah, it was something like that.
500 men. We had these bunks about 5 high. And I spent most of my time on the on top deck. And now it took us 33 days to go through the Atlantic to the Mediterranean. We got to the Mediterranean, or we had destroyer escorts that escorted us across. They all turned around and went back to the States. And then we said to ourselves, what's going to happen now? We're not going to have any support at all. Then the British destroyers took over escort service at Gibraltar. And that's when we started getting these air attacks. And they would strafe us. And we finally made it. We're supposed to be disembarked in Africa. And they took us all the way through by Sicily up to Rome, up to Bari, Italy. And then we found out we weren't supposed to be there, so they had to send us by boxcar. Boxcar is a 40, what we call 40 and 8.
It's the railroad cars.
You're right. 8 horses.
And that's very famous with the American Legion. They have
right?
Yeah. I used to be a member.
Oh, okay.
But then I got out of the prison too. I mean,
Yeah, you
I'm only
did?
kidding. No.
So we rode these boxcars, went all the way down to Sicily. The reason we're going to Sicily is to get mountain training. We were scheduled to go into French Riviera and the Maritime Alps. They found out at that time in Rome, we were at the Pope's summer home. We weren't allowed to go to visit any of the buildings, and we set up camp and pup tents in the field. From there, I was closely guarded because, let me tell you about what happened. They got some Frenchmen, the OSS got Frenchmen that lived in the area that we were going to jump in, that knew where the German gun positions were at. And I was used as an interpreter.
Yeah, I saw that.
Interpreter to mark on the maps where these positions were at. Well, when I had to go to the bathroom, the latrine, I couldn't go by myself. I had 2 MPs escort me and watching me. They watched me every minute of the hour because I knew too much. And then from there, we boarded C-47s, sat in these seats, bucket seats. We were loaded with equipment, and we got all sprayed with black, I don't know what it was, grease or something, so our skin wouldn't have any reflection.
As you were going in at night.
Right, we're going to, it was a daytime jump, actually. It's the first time that they had a daytime jump for a combat mission. Well, I landed just south of Draguignan, which is close to the Maritime Alps, about 20 miles inland. And our mission was to prevent additional German forces from reaching the shore where the troops were going to land. We did that, and we had very little opposition. The first German I met was laying in a field and he was bloated, and I stepped on him. I didn't know what I stepped on. He was bloated, and I heard the squish. And well, I'm glad he's not alive, but he had it at Luger, and I took it. And when I got reassigned later on, I had to go to Texas. I sold it, and I shouldn't have done it. It was real valuable to have.
Yeah, I bet it was, yeah.
From that operation, we had a 40-mile front that we had to cover, secure, in the French Alps. They sent us on patrol, and one of the incidents that happened, we got ambushed up in the mountains. We thought we had reached the peak of the mountain, and we were trying to identify where the Germans had their pillboxes. And they were painted white, and we were snow up to our waists. So we couldn't see these pillboxes, and all of a sudden they started firing at us. So we dropped in the snow, and every time I would get up and try to get out of there, I'd have all these bullets come right beside my head. I could see the snow shooting up from the bullets being fired at me. I emptied my rifle that I had, M1, in the general direction of where the fire was coming from. We couldn't tell where they were at. They were painted white, pillboxes. And that was one of the incidents that came very close to wiping me out. We had 12 men in the operation. We lost, I think it was about over half of them. And I also lost my rifle. I used the weapon, and my rifle shot this bunch of the 8 rounds that I had, and then either they shot my rifle out of my arms or I dropped it, but I got back to camp after that incident.
Yeah.
From there, we were patrolling that whole area. I was used as interpreter for the various missions they had to do, find out where the Germans were at. All of a sudden, we were told that we would be moved up to Belgium, the Ardennes, because the Battle of the Bulge had started. From there, we were transported with 2.5 ton trucks to Ardennes, and we got to a point where they had machine gun fire across the road, and we were driven by these drivers that stopped all of a sudden, and they turned around and they wouldn't go any further. So we had to get out and walk the rest of the way. That was to approach the Ardennes, and I got a picture of that of the troops of our unit walking. And that was the start of the Battle of the Bulge for us.
Yeah, the Battle of the Bulge, I know there was a lot of snow and ice, a lot of cold, and a lot of frostbite.
It was very cold. It's the coldest winter they had in, I don't know, 20 years or something.
Yeah, you say many of them were lost last night, and the B-17 bombers finally hit the German tanks.
Right. We had, what happened was we were attached to the 82nd Airborne, and our commander was called to into the 82nd Airborne commander, who told them that we would have to secure this area, that the Germans, they were on high ground, they had machine guns in place, they had 60-ton Tiger tanks, and we were supposed to take that area over. Well, what happened was we lost 80% of our unit because we were sitting ducks. We we couldn't go anywhere. We got frozen feet because of the streams that we had to go through. And I don't remember too much as to what happened, except I remember getting down in the ground as much as I could to stay alive. And when the tank came down the road, it shook the ground everywhere. You knew it. We had a bazooka man who did fire at the tracks of the tank and knocked the tank out, but they were still inside and very active, so we were careful not to get too close to it. I don't remember too much as to, we had a lot of casualties, and I remember that the medics were very busy patching up bodies that were wounded. And from that point on, I remember being evacuated to a hospital in Belgium, and I spent a month there with frozen feet, sweating out whether they would turn black and they'd have to be amputated. And during that month, I saw many soldiers come in and got treated for gun wounds or shrapnel, and they would leave in about 10 days. But they wouldn't let us go out, so it took a month. After that, when I got out, what happened was there was so few left in our unit that the Army decided to what do they call it? Disband.
You went to according to this, you went to the 551st. You were reassigned there to rejoin.
Right. I was trying to find the 551st, but that didn't exist anymore, according to the Army.
So then you joined the 82nd Airborne.
So I was assigned the 82nd Airborne in Berlin. I went all the way to Berlin trying to find the 551st. It didn't exist anymore. And of course, later on, the Army did not want to give us any recognition for what we did. So when I went to Berlin, I was put on guard duty in a underground vault, so we never knew what was in them. But that was our duty every day, to go and guard those vaults. We didn't understand what it was. Finally, they sent me home. I got home, I got discharged at Fort Dix. They gave me $275, and they said goodbye.
Yeah, this was December of 1945. Right?
That was December of 45.
I may just tell a few of our listeners out there that you have the parachute wings and combat jump star, the combat infantry badge, the Order of Airborne Botnik, the American Campaign 41 to 52, Presidential Union Citation Bronze Star for valor, Meritorious Service from Belgium 44 to 45, French Diploma for Service 44 to 45, European, African, Middle East Service Medal, Army Operations Medal in Germany, and World War II Victory Medal.
Yeah,
Wow!
There's one.
I missed something, right?
Yeah, no, you
Blame
didn't.
your wife. She didn't type it there.
We were given a bayonet award because we're the only unit that was instructed to use our bayonets during the, it wasn't the Battle of the Bulge, I believe. It was the invasion in southern France, where we had, I don't remember whether the Battle of the Bulge or southern France, but we had to go through this area where the Germans were in foxholes, and we were told to mount our bayonets and go through and clean this area out. Well, what happened was, as I proceeded to go through, they were putting their hands up. The Germans were. They were the older people that didn't want to be in the Army to begin with, and they wanted to go home. Well, what we did, I didn't have to use my bayonet. I had to have it on. We took these people, these soldiers, and we searched them, and we gave them the general direction where to proceed. We didn't have people to escort them. So they just gave up and just went beyond the lines.
It was near the end of the war.
Right, it was near the end
But
of
I
the
see
war.
this, according to this, you re-enlisted in the Army in April of 1947.
Okay, what happened was I was going to school on the GI Bill, and I learned communication electronics at the University of Carolina. After that, I worked in my field, but I felt I wasn't getting anywhere. So I went and re-enlisted in the Army. And the first thing I did after I re-enlisted is I signed up for every course I could get in the Army. The first course was automatic telephone systems in central offices. Then I went into radio, I went into microwave, then I went into missile monitor, and I took everything that I could get. So I went from private up to chief warrant officer. I was with the 82nd. I was with the 82nd. I was with the 101st, and I remember that going to the airfield to make our. We had to make one jump every 3 months to remain on hazardous pay status. So I couldn't get on an airplane, so I had a friend who was a pilot with, we call them Hueys, H-U-1B helicopters. So he gave me a ride on a helicopter and took me up and said, okay, you can go now. So I jumped out. That was the first time I ever jumped out of a helicopter, and it was scary because instead of going backwards, you go down real fast. And I remember that incident. When we got out of the Army, we had reunions every year in one part of the country or another, and my wife went with me, and we met the people that were remaining in the unit. We had fewer soldiers every time we had a reunion in different parts of the country. It got to the point where there wasn't enough left to continue the association. We also got some recognition from the Army in 2001. We went to the Pentagon and they had a ceremony for our unit. And they, I don't know, I really don't remember what it was, what they awarded. They made some type of award. The Chief of Staff of the Army conducted the ceremony.
Yeah, we have a couple plaques back there. Maybe those are one of them. But I understand when you went all the way up to Chief Warrant Officer, right?
Yes.
You know, I got a lot of respect for warrant officers.
Well,
Because they're between the spit and the polish. Everybody knew that. You know, they are the head of the enlisted men, right below the officer, the young officers who don't know what's going on, so they talk to you.
well, they never put us under a young officer. We always worked for a colonel, at least a major or a colonel.
What year did you get out? 1956, 57? What year? You did how many years in the service?
I did 20 years.
20 years. And you got out in what year?
64.
1964. You were all over the place. But after you got out, you had was a son or somebody took you on a flight? What was that about?
Yes, that was for World War II museum in New Orleans, which I didn't know existed. But American Airlines allowed him to fly me to New Orleans, and they provided an aircraft, and he flew it and it was one of the best visits I ever made. They were very, it was very enlightening. However, there was nothing about southern France and the invasion. We were the 1st Airborne Task Force, and there was nothing in the museum about it. They had a lot of information on the Battle of the Bulge, but nothing on where we dropped. So I managed to get in contact with a doctor that lived in southern France. He wrote a book about the operation, and I talked him into sending me the book, and it was about 3 inches thick, and it had all the details of everything that happened. And now I can't find the book. I loaned it to somebody. I never got it back. Anyway, New Orleans trip was very. It was very rewarding. I enjoyed it, and during the trip we were well treated, and we board buses to go to the museum in the morning. We got motorcycle escort, and the people would line the roads and clap for us. And I was really amazed at the reception that we got. It was very nice. And
That is a terrific museum.
Yeah,
I've had the honor
it was
of
really
going there.
nice.
I got a couple of photos for you. You know what that is, right? What is that?
C-47.
There's a C-47. Those are the ones you kind of flew on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And these particular pictures I took up in Oxford, Connecticut. These planes were going back for the anniversary of D-Day. They was, they went. So it was a whole group of them. So I'm going to give you these pictures. I thought you might like to have.
Oh,
them.
yes, right.
And this was your accommodations, right? When you I'll turn it around this way. When you were in the plane, right?
Right.
I noticed. Where was the movie and the stewardesses and everything?
Where was
There
the
weren't
what?
the stewardess in the movies. What was
wasn't
that?
any.
There wasn't any. No. And you had a hard time getting out of one of them seats one time. You told me, right?
Yes. I couldn't get up because I had too much equipment. I was too heavy. So the guys beside me lifted me up so I could hook up on the line there.
Well, these are for you, my friend.
Oh, thank you.
I know you were in several battles and everything, and we could probably talk all day, but we're kind of running out of time here. Well, I am glad you're here today. I see you got your jacket on. That's amazing. You can still fit in that jacket. You didn't have it altered, did you?
Big pardon?
Did you have it altered?
No.
No? Same yeah?
No, it's the same jacket.
Wow. It's nice. Airborne patch on it.
When I was working for
And there you go. That's the warrant officer.
when I was working for the 82nd, General Westmoreland was the commanding general. He called me in and he said, as long as you keep signal equipment deadline rate below 5%, we'll get along. I said, yes, sir. And then I figured out how to keep the deadline rate below 5%. What I did is I got buddy-buddy with the post signal shop that had civilians repairing communication equipment. And I made a deal with them. Whenever I had too much equipment, I'd take it over. They would repair it. I made sure they got the credit for it. And then I kept below 5% in the division. And then periodically we'd have to go to the airport and pack all the communication equipment, take it to Fort Campbell. Fort Campbell, 101st Airborne would do the same thing, send their equipment to Fort Bragg, and then we would check it to see if it was serviceable or not. So we write reports on our own equipment back and forth. And I remember that incident, that would happen maybe once a month, once every year, and without much notice. So
And
that's how
I just want to just show these off a little bit. This is your 551st Parachute Infantry Battalion Association.
That was the last meeting we had.
Yeah, and this other one here was Go ya. No, this is 551st Parachute Infantry Battalion again. This was November 16, 2007. So I got to hand it to you, my friend. You served our country well. You did 20 years and very interesting 20 years. But we have to go because I could talk to you all day.
Oh,
I think you could probably talk all day. But we have to go.
Well,
And when I go, I do a salute. And so will you join me in this salute? Because I don't know if you ever saw any of my shows. I told your daughter to put them on the TV. Did she do it yet? She didn't put them on the TV.
I
yet.
did one today for him.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, anyway, if you saw it, this is how we ended the show. To all our veterans out there, our active military and their families, we salute you for all you do. Till next time.